I caught my stepson about to touch me, and then my son opened the door, a must-watch. It happened in a moment so quiet, so still, it almost didn't feel real. His hand was reaching toward me, slow, deliberate, until that sound shattered everything. The creak of a door, the shift of air, and there he was, my son, staring, frozen, eyes wide with something I'll never forget. I should have stepped away. I didn't, and now, nothing will ever be the same. My name is Marissa. I'm 39, a mother, a woman who once believed in second chances. After the divorce, I told myself I was fine. I had my son, Evan. He was enough. We had our little routines, quiet dinners, shared rides to school, weekends of silence filled with laundry and homework. Then Tyler showed up. He's my ex-husband's son, 25. He needed a place to stay while figuring things out. I didn't think twice. He was family, familiar. The first few weeks were uneventful. He helped around the house, cleaned up after himself, kept mostly to his room, polite, detached. But the house changed. It wasn't just me and Evan anymore. There was another energy, a shift. Tyler wasn't loud, but he was present in a way that made me aware of myself. A glance across the kitchen, the quiet sound of his footsteps upstairs. I didn't expect to feel anything. I told myself I wouldn't. But something in me had already started moving. I was still the mother, still in control, at least, that's what I thought. Until the night it all came undone, one glance, one breath, one mistake from a past I thought I buried. I wasn't always this woman. I used to believe in love that stayed, in vows that meant something. I married young, to a man who knew how to charm a room but never figured out how to hold a home. At first, he tried, or maybe he pretended well. But over time, things faded, conversations became logistics, touch became obligation, and I became background noise. By the time our marriage fell apart, I was already gone inside. The hardest part wasn't losing him. It was realizing he had stopped seeing me long before he left. I didn't cry when the papers were signed. I didn't beg. I just packed the boxes, smiled for Evan's sake, and moved on. Or so I thought. Single motherhood has a way of swallowing you whole. It's a life lived in function, cook, clean, drive, repeat. There's no space for softness. No room for the woman I used to be. Some nights, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when I stopped wanting things. When did I stop wanting to be touched? To be needed? To be seen? And then Tyler arrived. I told myself he was just a guest. Just my ex's son. Temporary. But even temporary things can cause permanent cracks. Especially when the silence has gone on for too long. Especially when the only touch you've known for years is the cold side of the bed. It happened on a Sunday morning. The kind where everything felt too still. Evan had gone out early to meet friends, and the house was unusually quiet for a weekend. I came downstairs barefoot, coffee mug in hand, wearing one of those oversized shirts that belonged to a version of me from years ago. The fabric hung loose, soft from too many washes. Tyler was already in the kitchen, shirtless, standing by the fridge, pouring juice straight into a glass. He didn't flinch when he saw me, just looked, direct, calm, casual. But something lingered in his eyes. A pause, a flicker. He smiled, didn't mean to steal all the orange juice. I laughed lightly. It's fine, you're keeping the fridge from being lonely. It was nothing, just a joke, a harmless exchange, but my heart beat faster than it should have. I told myself it was just the stillness, the morning quiet, the fact that I hadn't had coffee yet. But it stayed with me. The way his eyes didn't move too quickly. The way he leaned against the counter, at ease, like he belonged. That night, I caught myself thinking about it. The moment, the look. Not because it was inappropriate, because it wasn't. Not really. But because it made me feel like I still existed. Like I wasn't just someone's ex-wife. Someone's mom. I started noticing the small things after that. How he always offered to help with dinner. how he asked how my day was, and actually waited for the answer. It had been years since someone looked at me and actually saw me. I should have ignored it. Should have kept my distance. But when your world has been silent for too long, even a whisper can sound like a song. And his presence, quiet, steady, was growing louder. A few days later, I couldn't sleep. The air in the house felt thick, humid, heavy. I got up for a glass of water, padding quietly into the kitchen. Tyler was already there, again. Barefoot, t-shirt clinging lightly to his chest. He turned when he heard me, and for a moment, we just stood there, half in shadow, half in silence. "You couldn't sleep either?" he asked. I shook my head, reaching for a glass. Our fingers didn't touch, but they were close, closer than they should have been. I tried to keep my breathing steady, tried to act normal, but I was hyper-aware of everything, how his voice dropped just slightly when he spoke to me, how the kitchen lights softened his features, how the space between us felt smaller than it used to. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing important, something about Evan's school project, something about groceries, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I laughed too quickly at something he said. And when I turned toward the sink, I felt it, his gaze, not wandering, focused, lingering. It didn't feel threatening, it didn't even feel wrong. But my skin warmed, my pulse skipped. I told myself to walk away, to say goodnight and go back upstairs. But instead, I stayed, let the moment stretch a little too long, let the stillness pull tighter. Then he stepped closer, just half a step, just enough to test gravity. And something in me didn't resist. I set the glass down. The clink against the counter sounded too loud, too final. "I should go back to bed," I said, but my voice didn't sound like mine. He nodded, but he didn't move. And neither did I. It was the first time in years I felt my body react to someone. Not out of duty, not out of fear, but because something in me had woken up. And it terrified me. I avoided him the next day, or at least, I tried to. But the house wasn't big enough to erase that moment. Every room I entered felt like it remembered. Every glance from him made my skin buzz in a way I didn't know how to silence. I hated myself for it. Because I wasn't some reckless woman chasing desire. I was a mother, a grown woman who should have known better. But shame and longing have a strange way of coexisting. One whispering guilt, the other, need. I told myself I was just lonely, that I missed being seen, that I missed feeling like more than someone's default setting. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. There was something about Tyler, about the way he listened, the way he was present, that cracked something open in me I thought had long since died. Still, I fought it. I cooked, cleaned, kept busy, asked Evan about school, tried to force normalcy back into the cracks. But even Evan seemed to notice I wasn't quite myself. He asked if I was okay one evening. Just a passing question, said while setting the table, but it landed deep. I smiled, lied, said I was tired. He nodded, didn't press, but his eyes lingered a moment longer than usual, and I felt the weight of his trust press down on me. He didn't know, but somehow, he sensed it, the shift in the air. That night, I stood in the bathroom, brushing my hair, staring at the reflection of a woman I barely recognized, not because she was older, but because she looked conflicted. And maybe even worse, alive. I whispered to myself, "Stop this, before it becomes something real." But real had already crept in. And the more I denied it, the louder it became. The storm came in heavy that night. Thunder rolled in low waves, like something alive moving beneath the skin of the sky. Rain lashed against the windows, hard and fast, the kind of night made for staying in bed, pulling the covers over your head, pretending the world didn't exist. But I couldn't sleep. Again. I wandered downstairs, hoping movement might quiet the noise inside me. The house felt different at night, emptier. but not in a peaceful way. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the sliding glass door, watching the rain hit the patio in scattered rhythms. Then I heard footsteps. Bare, unhurried. He stepped into view like he belonged there, like I had somehow summoned him. Tyler, hair tousled, white t-shirt clinging to him, damp at the collar. He didn't say anything, just looked at me for a long second, then sat across from me at the table. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was charged. "I didn't expect you to be up," he said. "I could say the same to you," I replied, forcing a smile. Another pause. "Do you feel it too?" he asked. I blinked. "Feel what?" He didn't answer right away, just tilted his head slightly, eyes scanning my face like searching for something I couldn't name. "This pull," he said softly, "like something's happening, and we're just pretending it's not." My breath caught. My grip tightened around the wineglass. I should have shut it down. I should have stood up and walked away. But instead, I whispered, "Yeah, I feel it." And that's when it shifted. He stood, walked around the table, stopped just inches from me. The rain grew louder, like it was trying to drown out the moment. His hand lifted, slowly, gently, toward my cheek, hovering, waiting. And I didn't move. I didn't stop him. My body leaned in before my brain could scream. His fingertips grazed my skin, barely a touch. And that was the moment. That thin, impossible line between thought and action. Then, a sound. Soft, but not soft enough. A creak, a breath. The sliding door behind me shifting. I turned, heart in my throat. And there he was. Evan. Standing just inside the doorway. Eyes wide, jaw tight, frozen. Watching everything. He didn't say a word. Evan just stood there, soaked in moonlight and disbelief, his eyes darting between me and Tyler. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat. I tried to speak, to explain something, anything, but my lips refused to move. I saw it happen in his face. The understanding, the hurt, the betrayal. Not just because of what he saw, but because it was me. His mother. The woman who told him right from wrong, who promised she'd always be someone he could trust. I took a step forward. "Evan, wait." But he had already turned. Footsteps, quick, panicked. Then the slam of his bedroom door upstairs. Silence. A silence that hit harder than any scream. I stood there shaking, my fingers trembling around the stem of the wineglass I hadn't even realized I was still holding. When I turned to Tyler, his face had shifted, tight jaw, wide eyes, hands clenched at his sides, not with anger, but with the same fear I felt crawling under my skin. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say. Because in one breath, everything had changed. The moment we had flirted with had finally caught up to us. And Evan had seen enough to understand what almost happened. What nearly broke us. I went upstairs a few minutes later, stood outside Evan's door with my hand hovering just inches from the wood. I didn't knock. I couldn't. Because I didn't know what I'd say if he opened it. I didn't know how to explain the unexplainable. Instead, I just whispered, "I'm sorry," through the silence, knowing full well he wasn't listening. Knowing full well, I didn't deserve for him to. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that presses against your skin. Evan came down for breakfast like a stranger. Hair uncombed, face blank. He didn't look at me. Not once. I placed a bowl of cereal in front of him. He picked up the spoon without a word. Tyler was already at the table, coffee in hand, calm, too calm. I sat down slowly, watching the two of them across the table, a silence stretching like glass between us. I wanted to say something. To acknowledge what had happened. To apologize. But every word felt too thin. Too late. Evan didn't speak, just ate, one bite at a time. No emotion, no glance. It wasn't anger, it was absence. He was gone, even while sitting 2 feet away from me. That was the part that broke me. Later that day, I knocked on his door. "Can we talk?" I asked. No answer. I waited, 5 seconds, 10. Then walked away. That night, I passed him in the hallway. Our eyes met for the briefest second. Mine were full, his were empty. I whispered, "I'm sorry," again. He kept walking. There were no slamming doors, no yelling, no dramatic confrontation. Just the slow, quiet dissolving of something sacred. A few days passed like that. Tyler said little, kept his distance. Eventually, he packed his things, left a note on the counter. I didn't read it, I couldn't. Because no words could undo what had already taken root. I moved through the house like a ghost. Light switches, dishes, laundry, the motions of a life still pretending to function. But Evan's silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. And every day that passed without a glance, without a word, without even the smallest flicker of recognition from my son, was worse than any punishment I could have imagined. Because I hadn't just made a mistake. I had broken something I once believed was unbreakable. And the worst part? I didn't know if I could ever put it back together. I didn't just lose his trust. I lost the right to be his mother. And some nights, I wonder, was it the almost that ruined us? Or the silence I kept before it? If you were me, would you have stopped? Or would you have let it happen too? But sometimes I wonder, was it worse to almost cross the line? Or to feel nothing at all for so many years before it? Tell me, if you were me, would you have walked away? Or would you have done exactly what I did?